Okay, I wanted to hop on here and answer some questions that a lot of people have been having about the incident in Atlanta regarding Rayshard Brooks and him being shot in the Wendy's parking lot. Everyone's seen the video by now. Everyone's seen the body cam. Everyone's seen the footage. We've seen the Wendy's footage. We've seen the body cam footage. We've seen it all, okay? So one of the things that keeps coming up that I told people I would address, and first of all, everyone commenting, everyone putting in their 2 cents. Of course, we appreciate the respectful interaction, but do your research before you comment. As an officer for 13 years, I did the job for 13 years. You learn a lot. You learn what's wrong with the system, what's right with the system, and you also have a lot of knowledge about what some of the things mean on the job. So one of the things that people keep asking or keep saying is the taser is non-lethal. And you got to be very careful with your language. Tasers are less lethal. They are not non-lethal. So that means, yes, a taser can kill you. Now, I see people commenting. They're not police officers. They have no training with tasers. They've never been tased. They know nothing. And they're saying, when someone's like, well, he turned and pointed, Mr. Brooks turned and pointed the taser at the cop. That can't kill the cop. It's non-lethal. Listen, between 2001 and 2007, 245 people were killed as a result of getting tased. They are less lethal than being shot with a gun, which is lethal. They are not non-lethal. You can't have a weapon that has killed 245 people and say it's non-lethal. People, do your research. There is this website. It is called Google. Simply Google, are tasers lethal? Just Google it. Use DuckDuckGo. Use whatever you want. But the information is out there. Tasers are less lethal, meaning that in some instances, tasers can be lethal. They can be lethal. So when people say he turned around, he pointed at the cop, but the taser's not lethal, 245 people between the years 2001 and 2007, and probably a lot more. That's the numbers I found. Probably a lot more since 2007 to 2019, because tasers have become more prominent in police work. So you can expect that number is probably higher than that 6-year window. More departments have tasers. More officers are using tasers and deploying tasers to subdue non-compliant individuals. Tasers are one of the tools police officers use in response to resistance. So, let me say it again. Tasers are lethal, but they are less lethal than a gun, which is considered lethal, deadly force. Tasers have killed many, many people. Hundreds of people, if not thousands of people at this point. Please know that. A taser can kill you. The next thing that people are talking about is the autopsy report. And the medical examiner has ruled Mr. Brooks's death a homicide. So, of course, once that came out, everyone is like, oh, that's it. It's homicide. He's guilty. He's guilty. I've had the luxury of speaking to medical examiners during my 13 years as a police officer. And I also know many physicians and people in the medical world. When the autopsy report comes out, they look at the cause of death. And the cause of death in this case is homicide, meaning a man was killed by another man. Homicide. One man was killed by another man. Homicide. That's all that means. The coroner, the medical examiner's report does not determine fault or guilt or manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, or anything like that. Now, the coroner, or the medical examiner's report came out, and he listed Mr. Brooks's death as a homicide. Is that a surprise to everyone? It wasn't suicide. It wasn't accidental. We all know this. He was shot by a police officer. The report showed he was shot in the back. And it's a homicide. Everyone knows that. But homicide doesn't mean first-degree murder. Homicide doesn't mean manslaughter. That is to determined by the DA, which they said he's going to be making the decision this week. Will there be charges against that officer? And those charges will either be one of those things. Manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, whatever. First-degree murder, second-degree murder, whatever, Georgia has. So, just to give you clarity, homicide on the medical examiner's report, on that death certificate, does not do any guilt whatsoever. It's just the cause of death. And we all know, Mr. Brooks, it wasn't suicide, it wasn't accidental, anything. Okay, got it. So, the other thing people are saying that I want to address is, why did the cops chase him? This is something that has come up time and time again. I see a lot of people commenting. They're saying, well, first of all, let me address the people who are saying, why didn't they let him walk home? Why didn't they let him walk home? Okay, so where I worked, there was a law called John's Law. And you are required to tow the person's vehicle, and you are required to not allow them to, you can't leave the vehicle where it is. So even if it's like, you can't leave it parked somewhere, you can't leave it on the side of the road, and you guys can look up John's Law. Okay, but to let once you've determined on body camera that the gentleman or woman that you are dealing with is intoxicated, and you see the officer clearly holds the thing up in front of his body camera to see that Mr. Brooks is over the legal limit. It was 0.108. Okay? He's over the legal limit. Obviously, the law states, and a lot of people don't know this, if you are behind the wheel of a vehicle that is running, that falls under DWI. Now, had Mr. Brooks been parked in a parking spot with the vehicle off, not running, no keys in the ignition, and was just sleeping in his driver's seat, or maybe in the back seat, or maybe in the passenger seat, he could have been in the driver's seat. As long as the car was off, the keys were out of the ignition, he could have been passed out drunk. That's not DWI. That's not DWI. However, that was not the case here. And I know where I worked for 13 years, if someone is behind the wheel of a vehicle, the keys are in the ignition, and the vehicle is running, that it constitutes DWI. Okay? So that's the law. If you have a problem with the law, contact your local politicians. That is the law. And he was not even in a parking spot. He was in the drive-through line. Okay? So that is why when people are saying, well, what, he wasn't driving. He wasn't driving. He was in the drive-through line. He had clearly drove there, and he was in a car that was running. And the law states that that constitutes DWI. Now, the blood alcohol level is clearly displayed on the box that the officer holds up in front of his body camera to show what Mr. Brooks's blood alcohol level was. At that point, that officer is now obligated to take care of Mr. Brooks and either do one of two things: take him into custody, or take him home, or turn him over to a responsible party. Now, I am going to tell you this, that some cops won't tell you. I will tell you this right now. There are instances where you stop somebody and you feel like they're not plastered, but they've had too much to drink. There are instances where the police will use their discretion to have that person call for a ride or drive that person home. It happens. It happens all the time. Okay? Police officers have that discretion. We're not going to talk about whether that's right or wrong. We're going to talk about, does it happen? Yes, it does happen. It happens all the time. If a police officer stops someone, they've had just a little too much to drink, you say, you know what? You're not plastered, but you've had too much to drink. We're going to tow your car and we're going to call you a ride and get you home, and that's it, okay? And you know, and then some people would have the nerve to like complain about their car getting towed. We're like, listen, we're giving you a huge break here. That's called police officer discretion, okay? Just like if you stop someone for speeding and you say, listen, I'm going to give you a warning, I'm not going to give you a ticket, okay? It's discretion, okay? But the moment that officer shows that blood alcohol on his body camera and that is memorialized on that camera system, that police officer cannot let that man walk home. So all the people who are saying, why didn't they say let him walk home? He was asking to walk home. You can't. Here's why. If that officer lets Mr. Brooks walk home and says, Mr. Brooks, leave your car parked here in the Wendy's and you walk home, today's your lucky day, there you go. So, you now let that person walk home. Mr. Brooks walks out into the roadway. He's a little tipsy and stumbles into traffic and is hit and killed. Now, I'm saying this based on experience. It has happened. Believe me, it has happened. What do you think Mr. Brooks's family would have done after they found out that a police officer stopped Mr. Brooks, a police officer, after field sobriety testing and a field breathalyzer, determined Mr. Brooks was over the legal limit and was drunk, by law, drunk, and let him walk away into the roadway and let him walk down a public roadway and cross a public street or a public highway without anything? What do you think Mr. Brooks's family would have done if he was hit by a car and killed while walking home drunk? I know what I would have done, and I know what you probably would have done. Once you found out your husband was hit by a car, your daughter was hit by a car, okay? You get there, you find out, oh my God, they're dead. Oh my God, how did this happen? Wait, hold on. Why was he walking home? He has a car. Where's his car? Okay, we're going to look for his car. Well, the officer handling the accident of the man who just got hit by a car will say, that's the guy I just let walk home from the Wendy's. His car is at the Wendy's. Yeah, the family's asking for the car. The family goes to the Wendy's. They meet the police officer there and they say, officer, why is his car here? Why was he walking home? And now there's an investigation. And the officer says, well, he was on the drive-through line. He fell asleep. He had a little too much to drink. I wanted to give him a break. I didn't want to lock him up. And, you know, he said he had a daughter and everything. He had a prior DWI. And he begged me to walk home. So I said, you know what? I'm going to let you walk home. I'm going to grant your wish. I'm going to let you walk home. And I let him walk home. You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, you let him walk home drunk? And you let him stumble out into the highway drunk? You let him walk home drunk? I'm saying this because I've seen it happen. I've heard of it happening. Look it up for yourselves. So, because of the body cameras that everyone loves and everyone wants for police accountability, we now are locked into certain decisions. Because once we let that man walk home, there's I don't know how many supervisors looking down on that incident, reviewing the car stop, reviewing the videotape, reviewing the body cam, reviewing the audio transmissions. And somebody will come down and they will say, "Officer, you clearly had someone who was drunk. Their blood alcohol level was on video on the box, and we watched the video of him failing every test. Why did you let him walk home? Why did you not place that man under arrest?" The days of that discretion where you can kind of let someone go, call for a ride, those days happened when I was a young police officer. But then, toward the end of my career, body cameras came in because the public was screaming that police need body cameras. They got to be held accountable. They need to have body cameras on, and I support the body camera 100%. But what the public doesn't know is that the body camera, or the advent of the body camera, erased officer discretion. Once supervisors and attorneys and the public who can, request the body camera footage, once they all started reviewing body camera footages and officers started realizing that their little areas of discretion here and there were now being micromanaged and viewed by people a week later, a month later, that's when cops said, "My hands are tied. If I pull someone over and they are drunk and the whole thing is on video, I can't let them go. I have to arrest them. Because if I don't arrest them now, it's all on video, and I'm going to have 100 people looking down saying, 'Why didn't you arrest that guy? He was clearly drunk. He failed all the tests, and your breathalyzer was on camera. Why didn't you arrest him?' And if you let that guy go, walk down the street, they're going to say, 'Why did you let that guy walk down the street? What's the matter with you? Why did you let him walk home?' He was, just over the limit, and he said he had a kid, and it was her birthday, and he just wanted to get home, and I tried to just help him out. I told him park his car in the Wendy's and walk home. Well, now he's dead because he got hit by a car because he was drunk and tripped and fell into the road. And now his family is suing the city and suing the police department, and now you're fired." That's what people don't know about police work and body cameras. They have to now act when they see what's in front of them, because then someone else is looking down. Now, some might say, "Why didn't you give him a ride home? Why didn't you give him a ride home?" Well, that causes another problem, and there's still people looking down. Why'd you give that guy a ride home? He was drunk. He fell asleep. He could have killed somebody. Driving to Wendy's, he could have killed somebody. If he made it out of the Wendy's, he could have killed someone. Why'd you let that guy go? Why did you let him go? Why you drove? What is going on here? The accountability that everyone wanted with police body cameras have now eradicated the ability for the police to have any discretion. If you do something wrong, it's now on videotape. You are going to jail. You're getting arrested. Because I know I'm not going to put my job on the line where 30 days later, 45 days later, some supervisor is going to come back and say, "Hey, we need to talk to you. Can you come in? Bring your union rep and leave your gun in your locker. Quick conversation, but bring your union rep. Leave your gun in your locker. You might want to bring an attorney too. Let me tell you something. That is not a good feeling for a police officer to hear. You think you did something good by letting a guy walk home, or maybe giving a drunk guy a ride home. But let me tell you something. You're going to feel some pain, because there's a lot of people. You think that body camera footage just records and then goes into like space somewhere and no one watches it? Yeah, you're wrong. About 20 people watch it. Now, if he gives Mr. Brooks a ride home, he gives him a ride home. Mr. Brooks gets out of his car. He walks in his home. And his wife says, why are you being brought home by the police? And he says, I had too much to drink. The cop stopped me. I fell asleep in the Wendy's drive-thru. And, he made me park the car and he gave me a ride home. Okay. Well, we need that car because that's our only car. And we got to take the kids to, whatever in the morning. We got to do this. I got to work in the morning. We need to go get that car. We need to go get that car. So they go get the car. Because they need to get that car. So they go get the car. Whoever gets the car, either him or his wife, they get the car. And they bring it home. And now it's in their driveway. And now it's a couple of hours later. And Mr. Brooks is like, man, I never got that Baconator. I never got those fries. His wife's sleeping. He feels like he's more sober now. He's a little bit more sober, but he's hungry. So he's like, you know what? Baby's sleeping, the wife's sleeping. I'm going to sneak out. I'm going to take that car really quick and hit up that Wendy's again. And on the way there, he hits someone and he kills somebody. It could happen. He hits somebody, he kills someone. It's an accident. He hits someone, he killed somebody. He runs a red light, he runs a stop sign, he hits somebody, he kills somebody. Maybe somebody who's walking. Now, once again, it goes back to the videotape. And he's going to be there in the side of the road, and they're going to say, hey, man, where are you coming from? Oh, I was driving from here. Okay, where were you earlier tonight? Yeah, well, we had to get the car, and then I came back. I never got my food. Well, what do you mean you had to get the car? Well, yeah, officer stopped me because I fell asleep, and he made me leave the car. He gave me a ride home. And don't think that his name, when he's involved in the accident, isn't going to be tied back to the name in the computer of the gentleman that the police officer drove home because he gave him a break. His name is going to be matched to that. So someone is there crunching numbers and saying, wait a second. The man who hit someone and killed him in his car at 1 a.m. back a few hours ago at 11 p.m. was driven home by a police officer. Wait a second. So Officer Smith, we need to talk to you. Bring your union rep. Maybe bring an attorney. Leave your gun in your locker. You walk in, you sit down, you're like, hey, what's going on? What happened? What? At around 11 p.m., did you drive a man named Rayshard Brooks home from the Wendy's? Yeah. What happened? He fell asleep in the drive-thru line. We had him park the car. I ran him through the tests. He was drunk, but, he said he had a kid. And, he had a prior DWI. I wanted to give him a break. I'm trying to give a guy a break. So I drove him home. I didn't want to ruin his life. I drove him home. Okay. And after you drove him home, did you secure his vehicle? Did you take anything? No, I drove him home. He said he was going to get the car with his wife. His wife could drive. She got a license. Or maybe you said, I told him don't drive. I told him don't leave that car here until morning and don't come back till morning. I told him, leave that car here. I'll let the Wendy's manager know. Leave that car here. Okay. And that was it? Yeah, I dropped him off. Okay. Well, Officer Smith, 3 hours later, Mr. Brooks decided to get in that car after him and his wife had retrieved it, and he decided to drive. And he was still technically intoxicated. And he hit and killed a young mother, or a young man, or an old lady. And that person is now dead. And that person's family is now asking to see the body cam footage of your interaction with Mr. Brooks at the Wendy's a few hours earlier. And they're now asking, Officer Smith, why did you drive a drunk man home? Why wasn't he in jail? Well, I don't, Captain, I was just trying to do something nice, Cap. I was just trying to give a guy a break. He had a little too much to drink. Well, your break led to him killing somebody because he decided a few hours later he was hungry and he was going to take that car that him and his wife retrieved, and he drove and killed somebody. So now you're fired. The family's suing the police department. They're suing the state of Georgia. They're suing everybody because they lost their baby because Mr. Brooks just killed him. So how can you win? The body camera has made it so people have to effect the arrest. The police officers are now stuck. They're beholden to that. You all wanted the body cameras, and I support the body cameras. But guess what? Careful what you wish for, because now your mama told you that. Your grandmama told you that. Careful what you wish for. You just might get it. And now the warnings and we'll let this slide, those are all going out the window now that all these attorneys and all these Open Public Records Act and everyone can now look at those videos. And 6 months later, someone can come crucify you for letting someone go, letting someone slide. 6 months later, a year later, they can come crucify you. Now, that is why, for all the people who are saying, why didn't they let him walk home? Why didn't they drive him home? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Listen, those days are done. Okay. So when they went to arrest him, Mr. Brooks chose to fight. He chose to fight. He chose to fight. He chose to assault the officers. He chose to take their weapon, and he chose to fire that weapon at an officer. That weapon we already determined at the beginning of the video can be a deadly weapon. 245 people killed between 01 and 07. And he was shot. He was shot. Senseless. Not needed. But he was shot. That is the story that I wanted to clarify, or the details that I wanted to clarify for some of the people who were asking about Taser, asking about the ME's report, and asking about why didn't they let him walk home or something like that, okay? So I hope this video provided some clarity for you on some of the things that police officers deal with, because there's a ripple effect that many of you don't understand. There's a cascading series of events that could ultimately end in the officer's demise, losing his job, losing his pension, losing everything. Now his family can't eat. Okay? This guy's fired already. They fired him. They didn't even do an investigation. That cop was fired before all the videos even came out of all the angles. That guy was fired before any of those angles. Is that right or wrong? Does he deserve an investigation? Does he deserve to be put on administrative leave before everything is discovered and found out? That every police department's different. Every police department's different. What I will say to end is, all of you people who are saying that there are systemic problems, and this is going to be the topic of the next video, so stand by for the next video, because I have some great information as an insider As an officer who had done the job for 13 years with this complexion, I have some insight into, and I'm going to go into this in the next video. But ask yourself, now everyone's saying there's systemic police racism, systemic, everyone, that's a new catchword, systemic within the police. I wonder if anyone took notice that all the white shirts, now the white shirts, for those of you guys who see the video, after the shooting, you saw a whole bunch of police officers in white uniform shirts with black tie at the scene in the Wendy's parking lot. Those are the supervisors. Some departments it's different. Typically it's lieutenant. So for those of you who don't know, most of the time it's sergeant or patrolman at the bottom, and then sergeant, and then lieutenant, and then captain, and then chief. Okay? So typically sergeants have the same uniform, but then when you get to lieutenant and captain and chief, a lot of the departments switch to a different color shirt, typically a white shirt. So when you see white shirts on scene and the patrolmen are in the dark uniforms, you know that they're supervisors. Did you notice that almost every supervisor on scene after the Rayshard Brooks shooting in that parking lot wearing the white police uniform was black? Did you notice that I think it's the mayor, I think her last name is Bottoms, is black? So all these people who are calling for this change in the Atlanta Police Department, and the mayor of the Atlanta Police Department, this black woman, Miss Brooks, is like, today we got to do some change. We got to do we're going to do this. This is from this day on. And wait a second. You're black. You got a boatload of black supervisors, which is awesome. You got a bunch of black men who made it through the ranks, and now they're at the top of the police department. They're helping run this place. They're overseeing all the patrolmen, who's bad, who's good, what kind of training, sensitivity training, this training, that training. All these supervisors who are black men and women, and the mayor who oversees the police department and programs for the police and programs for the city. You guys have all been in power. You guys have all had that position. Now all of a sudden you guys are like, oh, now we got to do something. No, we're doing it now. You guys have had these positions for years. For years. You would think you would have done something already to help situations like this or prevent situations like this from happening. You're a lieutenant in the Atlanta Police Department. You're a captain. You're chief. Minneapolis Police Department. Black guy's chief. If you're a black man and now you're at the top of the police department and even the couple of people below you are black too, at what point do you say, all right, guys, we got to get together and figure out something to help save these black young men and women that we're dealing with on the street? Let's get some initiatives in place. Let's get something in place. Let's not wait till someone's dead to put these in place. So let's go. Let's do it now. We grew up as black men. We know the system. We know what happens out there. So let's do something. Let's do it. And the mayor, a black woman, she's mayor. At what point did she, when she got elected, did she say, you know what? I made it. I'm mayor. I'm the mayor. Guess what? And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take care of my people. I'm going to see what I can do to help my people. I'm going to get some programs in place to help my people. I'm going to see what these cops are doing. To see what's going on there. I'm going to go see what these cops are. I'm going to talk to the chief and the captains who are all black. I'm going to say, guys, listen, we got to get some things in place right now because we got to make sure we never lose an innocent black man, a young black man in this city. What are we going to do? No. A black man fights with the police. He tries to take their weapon. He gets shot in the Wendy's parking lot. And now the mayor's on the front steps of City Hall saying, starting today, We're going to have some sweeping changes in the police department and training. What the hell? What the hell have you been doing? Anyway, that's going to be the topic of the next talk. Wash your hands. There's a virus out there.